That's cool. I have to assume some of that is coming through the speakers. You know, BMW likes to do that. They like to feed some of the fake engine noise in the speakers. All right, G87 manual transmission. She's quick, man. No slouch with the S58. These things are pretty impressive cars. The red is a statement maker for sure, but like I said before, man, I think it's the better option when it comes to these cars. It's like black or red for me. I don't know why I gravitate towards that in this car. What do you guys think? What is your favorite color in the G87? Do you even like this car? I know a lot of people really don't even like this car, but you know, they did grow on me. They definitely did grow on me after a while, and I've come to appreciate them. The more that I drove one, the more that I liked the actual car. So for me, that was kind of the evolution of the G87. The more that I drove it, the more that I sort of just fell in love with it, man. It's one of those cars that definitely grows on you after a while. This car is so comfortable to drive. I don't really feel like I'm in an M car. These newer cars, man, in their factory form, they are just extremely comfortable. Like, so comfortable that I'm just too used to E-Series cars, to be honest. This car was so controversial for such a long time. I don't know if that still carries with this car. I feel like so many people are already used to it. I have no problem admitting when I am wrong and I have a bad take. And I had a bad take about these cars. I think a lot of people did when they first came out. I think a lot of people were kind of polarized by the design. I'm like 90% won over on this car. There is still a little bit that I don't love about it, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the video. But I will say these cars have grown on me. Cosmetically, I do like the way that these look. I don't think they look the greatest in factory form and in the majority of colors. Personally, I would have loved to see this car developed in Dravit gray. I just love the Dravit on the G8X models, and I think that that would have looked really good in the M2, but they didn't get it. They got just like that goofy blue color and then some other basic colors. So this will be the second G87 that I have driven. I've driven another manual one, but it had like 600 horsepower. If you guys remember Diverge M2, the black M2 on the BBS LMs. And you know, I felt like this was a good opportunity to drive one that was completely stock. Like, this is how BMW intended for this car to be. And I think that that's kind of important when actually like driving and reviewing cars. So this is my first time driving a completely stock G87 M2, and we're gonna get sort of a first reaction on the car and go from there. I have to say, big shout out to my friend Nick, who has lent me this car for the day. Super kind of him to just basically give me the keys and trust me with it. Let's talk about the obvious in the cockpit, right? So manual transmission. Personally, and you guys know that I'm a manual guy through and through. All my cars are manual except for the M4. I would go with the automatic in this car, and I think it has more to do with the weight of the vehicle and the age of the vehicle. I don't really feel like the manual transmission pairs well with a lot of these newer cars. I just feel like the auto is faster, it feels better. I think it's just like a healthier fit with these newer cars, especially in like the G80s and G82s. Oof, but it handles so good. That is a absolute must. Yeah, it handles extremely good, which All of these new G8Xs are just incredible in the handling department. Power and handling, I mean, they just absolutely demolish. Like, these cars, they eat the corners, dude. And it's completely stock, you know, like I said. I had the opportunity to track the G82 completely stock, and it blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, these cars are so capable. And that's kind of why I wanted to drive this one completely in factory form, because, you know, it's a different appreciation when a car is just in the state that it was intended to be built in. Between the power and the handling, they are pretty freaking crazy, man. Like, this car only has 1,300 miles on it, which is crazy. Nick has had it for a year. It's his weekend car, you know, he just drives it every now and then, and it's only got 1,300 miles on it, so that's pretty crazy. The majority of M2s that I see have the sunroof, so it's nice to see the carbon on here. Oh, it handles so good. This one does have the factory seats. I'm beginning to realize like how rare it is to find these cars with the carbon buckets. Like, I never see them with carbon buckets. I've seen maybe 2 with carbon buckets. Every other one that I've seen has a sunroof, and it has the normal seats that come with the M2. I get it though, you know, like, the buckets are not for everyone. Like, they are pretty aggressive. If I were to buy this car and I weren't to like build it, but I was just like gonna go buy one, my absolute musts would be either black or red. It would be carbon fiber roof. I think that I could get away without doing the buckets. I would prefer them, but if it came down to it and I just could not find that spec, I would just go with the normal seats. This thing feels amazing. So we also have, as you can see, the ginormous screen in front of us, which also, when BMW released this car, or the G8Xs with the facelifts that have this big screen, it was pretty polarizing for a lot of people. Most people hate it. I actually love it. I'm probably like one of the few people that will sit here and say, I think it's really sick. In general, I really like all of the new like infotainment stuff that comes on the new BMWs. I think it's really nice. Like, the way that BMW stepped their interior game up from the F series to the G series, in my opinion, is sick. Like, I really enjoy the new interior setups. Dude, S58 powered. These things are nuts. We've had a handful of these come into the shop. We haven't really done any like big power builds on this car yet, but we've done some really nice, like, simple cosmetic modifications, and they really don't take much. Like, if I bought this car, I would probably daily drive it, and I would probably just do like a nice suspension setup, some spacers or some different wheels, and that's really it, man. I mean, I say that now, but you know how it goes. I would probably end up just going crazy on the car. Dude, yeah, this thing's great. They're so fast. So the manual just feels a little bit weird, in my opinion. Oh man, it just handles so good, dude. I mean, it's on rails, dude. It's good. It's really good. Oh man, this would be an absolute blast on the track. This car would eat a track up in factory form, just like this. It would be so fun. This is why I really wanted to drive one that was just completely stock, because I knew that it would be such a drastic experience from the other one that I drove. There was nothing wrong with the other one I drove, but it just felt so different, like so artificial from like how the original one was produced, that I had to experience this car like just factory, just stock. And it makes you really appreciate, you know, why they developed it the way they did, why they engineered everything the way that they did. There was obvious intention behind it. So Nick was talking about his experience with this car a little bit, and he was like, yeah, you know, it just makes so much power. It's like rare that you really get to open it all the way up because of the gearing and how fast it really is. You know, it's like you're in third gear, and by the time you're at top of third gear, you're going really fast. It's one of these cars where all of these newer cars, they make so much power these days. If you don't have the road for it, it's like, when are you using it, you know? I felt the same way about the G80 that I had the other day. I mean, it's making 740 wheel horsepower, but to be honest, if I'm not on a drag strip, like, where am I going to use that power? Like, I'm never going to use 740 wheel horsepower. I kind of find that like 500 is the sweet spot. Like 400 to 500 in these cars, like using all of it is like a really, really good sweet spot for this car. God, it pulls so hard, dude. I would love to have this car out on a track, dude. Absolutely love to track this car. This would be so fun. It's so smooth too. Like, you just don't feel like you're going fast at all. It's just such a buttery ride in this car. It's really, really nice. These do feel totally different than the G80s and the G82s. Like, they are big, they are heavy, but they don't really feel that heavy. Like, on paper, it's a heavy car, but I'm telling you, man, you drive one and it doesn't feel like that big. I had the same feeling when I drove the one with a bunch of modifications on it. Never really felt that heavy. There's that like goofy clutch delay valve in these cars, like that weird lag when you shift. That's the one thing that I just don't love about these newer BMWs with the manual transmission. And that's kind of why I would just be like, I'd rather be like slapping paddles, man. Like, I don't know. And you know I'm a freaking manual guy, like all the way. Oh, Jesus, the power is ridiculous though, dude. It's just like, it's just undeniable how fast these freaking cars are, man. It's crazy. It is crazy. So good, man. So freaking good. It's an impressive car. Like, the M2 is pretty sick. I know it catches a lot of heat because of its design elements, but man, it's a pretty sick car. A lot of like the things that you think about this car, that like the reasons that you wouldn't like it, they sort of fade away when you start driving them. You're like, damn, these cars are like, they are set up to be driven and they do it really, really well. Some beautiful homes out here. I'm out in the middle of nowhere, man. And listen, you guys, I have no problem admitting when I have a bad take on something, or I switch up, or I change my mind. I mean, that happens a lot. It's part of it. This was one where I ate my words, dude. Like, I definitely ate my words on the G87 because it just grew on me, like, big time. I think I started seeing more and more people building these cars in a motorsport light, and oh man, it just started looking so cool to me. Like, very modular, and these like really square, angular quarter panels, and like all of the hips are very pronounced on this car. It's different. It's definitely not for everyone, but I just think it's cool. Like, it's just so unique in that, it's just so unique in that sense. And yeah, these cars definitely grew on me. There's like this weird delay, you know, like when you shift gears and you're into the next gear, it's like a pause and then acceleration. And none of the older cars have that, and like all of the newer cars have that. It's just a weird feeling. Like, it just feels so off. One thing that I've never really liked about these newer cars with the manual transmissions, but that's not really the reason that I would say like, oh, don't go for the manual. The reason I would say don't go for the manual is because it just feels so out of place in this chassis. Like, just these cars are just too big for it. It's interesting. You got to drive the car to really see what I'm talking about, but man, they go, dude. It's good though, dude. This car is pretty crazy, man. It is pretty crazy. So that's, you know, and my only other gripe with these cars is the sound. Like, I'm not a big fan of the way the S58 sounds. Like, you can make it louder, it doesn't mean it sounds better, it just gets louder. It's the same thing with the S55. Like, even the single turbo ones, like, they sound better, you know, they definitely sound better, but they don't sound that great. Obviously, we can get into the weeds on that one, but yeah, man, it's grown on me. It's definitely grown on me. And, you know, I kind of want to get one, dude. I want to get an automatic one, and I just want to daily drive it. Like, I'm in between like a few cars right now as to like what I would want to get to daily, and one of them has nothing to do with building cars. It's just like a Toyota Tacoma. I want a truck. And another one makes me want to get back into a car. But I know the moment that I start dailying this, like, dude, I'm gonna fucking lower it. I'm gonna throw a bunch of mods on it. Like, it's gonna become a project car. Like, I just don't have the restraint to buy a car, not do stuff to it, and like change things, and just like, you know, I'll go down that road inevitably. So I don't know, maybe we got to wait until we can have another project like this in the garage. But yeah, I have a newfound love and respect for these cars. I'm not running to the dealership to buy one, but I definitely have a newfound love and respect for the cars and this car. And Nick even mentioned, you know, he's had this car for a year, and it literally took a year for this car to grow on him and for him to actually love the car a bit more. He said for the majority of his ownership of this car, he really didn't like it. He was just like getting ready to get rid of it. He was like, I don't really love it. Like, it's just whatever. But yeah, I don't know, man. It grows on you, you know? It's a grower, not a shower. It doesn't feel that heavy. Like, everybody talks about the weight. It doesn't feel that heavy. I mean, it's certainly not like the lightest car I've ever driven, but yeah. Fun car, man. Super fun. I'm obviously a big fan of the F87. The thing about these cars with the S58s is they can do straight line and they can do the corners. You know, like the F87s, like they're not slow, but the S58 is just on another level. And it's just kind of like, man, this car can really do it all. Like, if you wanted to make this thing like a drag monster, you could do it. You could definitely do it. Or if you just wanted to make it like a badass road car, you could do it. You could definitely do it. But the S55s in general, I mean, that platform really wasn't meant for like drag racing on any level, and that's why like the B58s pretty much sweep up all of the S55 powered cars when it comes to like drag racing. But you could see this car doing all of it. Like, really, if you wanted to put this thing on like some, you know, big ass slicks and turn it into a drag car, you could do that, definitely, and it would eat it for sure. But dude, I mean, this, like, it's so good. It's crazy. All of these new BMWs are so impressive, man. Like, it is nuts. So good, dude. Like, you guys have to drive one of these. It's pretty remarkable. Luckily for me, the first time I ever drove one of these cars was in the Poconos, which have really, really good roads. And so that is what really convinced me. Like, I drove the car out there, and I was like, man, this thing is like, it's no joke. Like, these cars are badass. That's all it took. The first drive. And I was like, okay, all right. And then I started seeing people, you know, throwing some tasteful modifications on them, building them the right way. I was like, yeah, it's getting better. It's getting better. One thing that I will say about this car that I noticed immediately, the tires and the brakes are extremely good on this car. Now, it has the Michelin PS4Ss, which are great tires, all around fantastic tires. The braking is incredible. Like, really, really competent brakes from factory. You could do everything in this car. Like, you literally just go to the track and then like drive it every day to work and have no problems with that. Unless, of course, you just preferred bigger cars, because this isn't the biggest car in terms of BMWs. It is obviously an M2, but for an M2, it is pretty big, right? I mean, it's heavy, it's bigger than all of the other M2s. It's crazy if you like watch the evolution of the size of these vehicles, like when it comes to M3s and M4s and M5s and the M2s, they've just gotten bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier. It's interesting how that works. But yeah, what a great car.